When Karen and Rich Light begat their son Ricky 14 years ago, Karen was put to sleep in the hospital while Rich went through a pack of cigarettes in the waiting room. This time, they decided she would have her baby at home.
Good. Here we go. Okay.
Around 9:30, the magic moment occurred. A powerful argument that being born is more a function of nature than a practice of medicine.
Okay.
When the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York acquired this painting by the 17th century master Georges de la Tour, it was elated. After all, the fortune teller was one of only 35 de la Tours in the world.
I know perfectly well that the picture is a modern forgery.
This painting is such a joke that the faker, if he's still alive, is probably enjoying it and laughing.
This may look like an ordinary tunnel, but it's not. This is Deep Tunnel, a true marvel of engineering. Its supporters call it the 8th engineering wonder of the world. Its critics call it a white elephant. But one thing seems certain: if government figures are correct, this entire project could be the largest and most expensive public works project this country's ever seen.
There's no way that I can oppose other boondoggles in other parts of the country and in good conscience then support the granddaddy boondoggle of all, a deep tunnel.
I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Morley Safer.
I'm Harry Reasoner.
I'm Ed Bradley. Those stories and more tonight on 60 Minutes.
It's here, the Datsun 210 Sold Rush. We're rushing to put sold on every Datsun 210 in stock.
I rushed for the economy sedan at a great price.
I got a roomy Datsun wagon. I went for the sporty hatchback and got a great deal.
I really got a spectacular deal, plus Datsun quality.
I struck it rich.
At the Datsun 210 Sold Rush. But hurry!
Datsun, we are 10.
Imagine your company with 1,800 data terminals scattered over 3 states. Suddenly, one runs wild and jams part of your network. How do you find it? Fast. A Data Phone 2 system from Bell, like First Wisconsin National Banks, does it for you. Pinpoints trouble and isolates it automatically. When time is money, this is the kind of information management you want. Get it with a call to your Bell System account executive. The knowledge business.
Tonight, we are going to show you a baby being born. We thought we'd let you know this right away, to give you time to get your kids to the television set if you think they should see it, or to get them away if you think they shouldn't. There's a kind of mystique about being born, even though every one of us went through it. Most of us went through it in a hospital, but there are those who think a hospital is the last place to have a baby.
It's a nice place to be.
When Karen and Rich Light begat their son Ricky 14 years ago, Karen was put to sleep in the hospital while Rich went through a pack of cigarettes in the waiting room. Karen had to be told that she'd had a baby. The process changed considerably as their 4 other children, including their twins, Timmy and David, were born. Last year, Karen became pregnant again. This time, they decided she would have her baby at home. Early on Christmas Eve, 1981, the time had come.
I'm going to catch my own baby with my own 2 hands. I think that's great.
Having a child born at home, if you want medical care as well, is not easy to arrange. Doctor after doctor turned them down.
I went to a doctor.
Sometimes the search was humiliating.
And I went to a lady doctor thinking, that I would find somebody more compassionate. She checked me and was very friendly. But towards the end of the visit, I said to her, I'm considering the possibility of a home delivery. And as soon as I said that, her attitude changed. She threw her pencil across the desk. She cursed. She started to swear, and she said, this is just something I'm not interested in. My nurses were supposed to screen out any patients like this. And I hadn't even said I was going to do it. I just said I'm beginning to consider the possibility.
Finally, they found Dr. George Wutap, who prefers delivering babies at home, but who's been suspended from the practice of medicine in New York State. Whether his mere presence constituted a violation of that suspension is something the state medical board may have to decide. But the suspension of their doctor wouldn't and couldn't shake the Lights' commitment to have the baby at home. Finding another doctor who would deliver a baby at home was all but impossible. So their only real alternative was to rely on this woman, Lois Dull, an unlicensed midwife.
More or less.
And so, with Lois in command now, and Dr. Wu-Tan watching, and daughter Dawn helping out, and daughter Amy relieving the tension by stuffing a pillow under her pajamas, and support from assorted labor coaches, friends, and neighbors, Karen Light's labor progressed into the night before Christmas. The way labor has progressed into the night for centuries.
Doesn't come out.
Until finally, around 9:30, the magic moment occurred.
Good. Here we go. Okay. Pant.
Pant, pant, and chanting.
That's it. Pant.
Here it comes.
Okay. Now we feel for the cord.
Oh.
Keep your bottom shoulders out, so lift it up. Lift it way up. Okay, press down. That's it. Okay, up we come. Oh, yeah. Turning down.
Thank God.
9:30, right on the nose.
And Catherine Light, weighing in at 8 pounds 13 ounces, was welcomed into the family. A powerful argument that being born is more a function of nature than a practice of medicine. Christmas Day, Dr. Wu-Tan spent quietly at home with his family, his wife, 10 children, and grandson. Dr. Wu-Tan has been spending a lot of time with his family since the state told him he couldn't practice medicine anymore. The proceedings against Dr. Wu-Tan remain secret, and physicians are very reluctant to speak out against their peers. But it is known that doctors on emergency duty here at Albany Medical Center have complained about complications they've found in some of Dr. Wu-Tan's home birthing patients. And 2 hospitals where he practiced, Kingston and Benedictine, have banned him. What we know is that there are 11 charges against Dr. Wu-Tan. Basically, they involve failure to provide adequate backup, acceptance of high-risk cases, and most important, letting complications go on too long before getting the laboring woman to a hospital for emergency care. The death of a fetus, the death of a newborn, and brain damage to a 3rd child are blamed on these failures.
When I reviewed the charges, I felt they were sufficiently serious in terms of their outcomes to warrant the summary suspension.
Dr. David Axelrod is New York State Health Commissioner. He says that the case against him is just a matter of his taking business away from hospitals and obstetricians.
Well, that may be his perception, but my problem is that I have a responsibility, and I'm charged with protecting the public, the residents of the state of New York, from misconduct of physicians.
Wu-Tan dismisses the charges as a vendetta by the medical establishment.
95% of the physicians who are doing home births in the United States are now under some sort of legal harassment, either by the state, the local medical society, or the hospitals. If home birth is allowed to come back into the forefront, it's going to displace the obstetricians.
And Wu-Tan believes that in many cases, obstetricians deserve to be displaced. Because, he says, rather than preventing complications, obstetricians often create them by intervening in what should be a natural biological act.
A typical example would be a woman comes into labor, into the hospital in labor, not laboring too well. After a while, the physician will say, well, we'll rupture your membranes, break the bag of waters. Then her labor picks up a little bit, but not really too much. So that he says, well, now we'll give you some Pitocin. The Pitocin will increase the uterine contractions and the baby will be born faster. Then the mother's, because of these abnormal contractions, she was trained for natural childbirth, but now she's not having natural childbirth. So she needs something to help ease the discomfort that she's having, so that he then gives her something to sedate her and something to kill the pain. Then she can't push when it comes time to push the baby out, so he has to use forceps, so he gives her an anesthetic. Then the baby develops respiratory distress. And they pull the baby out, put the baby in the oxygen, and suction the baby out, and he turns to her and he says, you're really lucky you were in the hospital. I saved your baby's life.
Wu-Tan readily admits that there are times when something can go wrong during labor that requires getting the expectant mother to a hospital. But he believes there's always plenty of time to do that. Jean and David Laskins decided to have their baby at home, and they say they listened to and believed everything Dr. Wu-Tan told them. Everything was great until Jean went into labor.
How long have you been in labor intermittently when the decision was made to go to the hospital?
Been at least over a 2-day period.
2-day period?
Yeah.
Who made the decision to go to the hospital?
George Wooten finally made the decision.
And he told you had to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Did you go to the hospital?
Absolutely. I mean, at that point, I was relieved because it had been a long labor. I was exhausted. I was swollen. I had thought the baby was going to come at any moment, and that's not what happened.
When you got to the hospital, you
found out the baby was dead.
The Laskins are suing George Wooten over the death of their fetus. Wooten says it was the Laskins themselves who delayed the trip to the hospital.
There are 26 other cases of mine where the patients also had a complication of labor at home. I advised them to go to the hospital, and they went, and there were no problems.
Dr. Axelrod denies that the charges against Wooten have anything to do with being for or against home birthing.
The time has come for obstetricians to recognize that there is a need for the introduction of humanism into the delivery of women, that we have moved away in this era of technocracy, technology, from recognizing the special needs of the woman who's delivering. And I think that the medical profession is at least beginning to recognize those kinds of needs.
There's kind of a shortage, assuming a woman wants to have a baby at home or in an alternative situation. If Dr. Wooten is under suspension, that leaves the state kind of short of facilities, doesn't it?
They're not a great number, but they are there and they are available for those who wish to avail themselves. There are also alternative birthing centers.
Debbie and Eddie Buford are going to have their baby in one of those alternative birthing centers that Dr. Axelrod mentioned. This one is in a house on New York City's 92nd Street. There aren't many of them around, only about 125 in the entire country. Most are staffed by certified nurse midwives.
And then you stay here for, well, up to 12 hours after you've had the baby. And many people choose to go home within 3 to 4 hours.
Why did the Bufords choose a birthing center instead of a hospital?
Well, both Debbie and I work in hospitals, and I think hospitals tend to put you on an assembly line sort of process. It's a very depersonalized environment, the hospital.
But what if something goes wrong? Well, this center can get the laboring woman to a hospital in just 11 minutes. Is that time enough? Most obstetricians will tell you no. Dr. Nathan Case is the chief of obstetrics at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. He says that from the very beginning, couples should plan on having their baby in a hospital. For one thing, says Case, 5% of all women in labor suddenly need a cesarean delivery to save the baby. That means an operating room and a staff on full alert.
All of the material and equipment are immediately available. There's no delay.
And you mean immediate? I mean, you wouldn't be satisfied with 10 minutes down the street or anything?
Not at all.
You mean
seconds. This is our delivery room where special patients are taken when necessary. If they need special kind of delivery techniques such as forceps or monitoring during the very last parts of labor.
Forceps to get the baby out, stirrups to restrain the mother. It's that kind of intervention that women complain about. Dr. Case sees it differently.
There are points where it's just necessary. And this kind of support for the legs during the labor process is very useful and reduces risk and hazard to the fetus and mother.
How many of your births would have to come in here?
I would say about 20 to 50% will elect to come in here because something imperfect has occurred during the latter stages of the labor. In this particular room, we can have access to immediate intervention to bring the baby out. We can continue to monitor the fetus with respect to its heart rate and heart rate variability. We have the immediate capability of resuscitating the infant with all the material and technology required for stabilization, warming, oxygenation. We have immediate capability to care for the sick mother with oxygen, with suction apparatus, with, if necessary, immediate general anesthesia and heart rate monitoring. Go ahead.
At the first sign of serious fetal distress, the hospital staff can mobilize into emergency procedures. This time, however, technology was beaten by Mother Nature in a 50-pace dash down the corridor to the emergency delivery room.
The baby is coming!
It's that rush to the operating room that has turned couples away from hospitals. But hospitals are trying to change that image. They are meeting the competition head-on. They are encouraging natural childbirth and setting aside rooms that provide more of a homey atmosphere, rather than the cold steel look of the delivery room we just saw. They're called birthing rooms.
Did you fellows bring this development on yourselves? Did you let hospitals get dehumanized?
I think couples have added to our understanding of what the birthing process means to them, in addition to just the important elements of health and safety. There's the importance of this couple here together, bonding with this newborn. We no longer think that's trivial.
Karen Votava has just had her third girl, right in this birthing room, on that bed. No forceps, no stirrups, no tubes, no medication, no wires. But all of that is only seconds away if it's needed. This baby needed it.
This baby, who was born close to term, had a cord wrapped tightly around the neck, which we probably would not have predicted unless we were in a situation where we would have been easily able to monitor the baby.
Dr. Edwin Brown is in charge of the hospital's newborn intensive care unit.
Was it fair to say that the kind of situation you're describing could not be dealt with satisfactorily in a home situation?
This particular situation could not be dealt with in a home situation.
It would have been a dead baby or an impaired baby?
It would have been a baby who would have either been impaired significantly or perhaps died. Yes, that's correct.
And now his chances are good?
This baby's chances are excellent.
The perfect baby is what we're after. I think that's a worthy objective. We're delaying pregnancy as women enter the workplace. We're limiting family size. Each baby becomes a premium baby.
Kibbles and bits, kibbles and bits. I'm going to get me some kibbles and bits, kibbles and bits. Kibbles and bits. I'm going to get me some kibbles and bits.
Now, your Kibbles and Bits Love and Dog could star in the next Kibbles and Bits TV commercial. When you win the Kibbles and Bits TV Star Sweepstakes, win $25,000 cash. Lots of other spectacular prizes. Check details in Sunday papers and at participating stores. And you could hear your dog say,
Kibbles and bits, kibbles and bits.
Presenting the Datsun MVPs, the maximum value package Datsun. Like this special edition King Cab MVP. Get $500 off sticker price on valuable options like jump seats, stereo, chrome step bumper, and more. Imagine $500 off. Look for similar discounts on 4x4, Lil Hustler, and Diesel MVPs. Get one now.
Tonight on an all-new episode, should Archie play umpire in a romantic triangle? And on One Day at a Time, will Schneider's Russian romance lead to an international affair?
Yeah, jawohl.
Then on Alice, Mel gets hooked on a nose job.
Your nose will be back on its feet in no time.
And can George Jefferson hang tough after he's been robbed?
Do I look like a man in search of a laugh?
Then will Trapper and Gonzo uncover a hospital pusher before it's too late?
I think that little old lady's stoned out of her gourd.
It's all happening tonight.
What's at issue is the authenticity of this painting. Not just another painting, but one of the great treasures of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. It is called The Fortune Teller. It bears the signature of the 17th century master, Georges de la Tour. But there are those who ask, was it really painted more than 300 years ago? Or is it a modern forgery? Or conceivably a ruined de la Tour that restorers have worked over so much that it bears little resemblance to de la Tour's work? The small world of 17th century art is at war over this painting that the Met bought 22 years ago from a French dealer. It paid a whopping $675,000 for it. Happily, because the Met did not own a Delatour, and there were only 35 known in the world, and this new one was an event in the world of museum art. Today, the going price for this painting would be about $5 million. At least it would be if art historians in Britain weren't saying this picture is a fake, that the Met bought itself a lemon. The fortune teller is 48 by 40 inches. It hangs prominently in the museum's 17th century hall. This is not the actual painting. It's a photographic copy that we had made from the museum's own negative. The painting depicts a young man, possibly a cavalier, having his fortune told by an old gypsy woman. Meantime, 3 other gypsies are stealing him blind, taking his money pouch, cutting off his gold chain. If you look at this painting within the context of the entire known body of Delatour's work, it does seem out of place. In many of his paintings, he demonstrates his mastery of candle and lantern light, and always almost a loving attention to detail in the costumes of his subjects. Another thing, there's a stiffness in the characters in the fortune teller, almost as if they were posing. In other paintings, it looks more as if the motion has been caught. And when you compare close-ups of faces from the fortune teller with other Delatours, there's a marked difference in style, even to an amateur's eye. The painting came from a French dealer, now dead, who said he got it from the Château de la Vagotière, an obscure country house about 200 miles from Paris. The until then unknown picture was never put up for auction. The open forum of an auction is a good way to test whether dealers and collectors think a painting is genuine. The fortune teller was sold privately to the Metropolitan Museum in 1960. One man who was immediately alarmed was Brian Sewell, who was an old masters expert at the London auction house of Christie's. He's convinced he saw the picture in the late 1950s being hawked around Paris by another dealer. And Sewell says even then he declared it a fake.
And indeed, the picture has been known to a great many art historians for 22 years now, since it first surfaced in Paris in 1958 and was seen by me and no doubt many, many others in that year. And many of us have been extremely uncomfortable about that picture. But frankly, when Latour is as rare as Vermeer, and everyone would be clambering onto the bandwagon to publish it and eulogize it, they all remain silent is really too suspicious.
Brian Sewell is far from alone as a critic of the fortune teller. There's Sidney Sabin, a distinguished art dealer in London who was responsible some years ago for unmasking what has come to be known as the Boston Raphael. The Boston Museum of Fine Arts had purchased what they thought was a work by the Italian Renaissance master, Raphael. Like the fortune teller, it was declared by museum officials to be a centuries-old masterpiece. But it was Sabin's intervention, his pointing to a number of faults, that made the American and Italian experts declare it a modern fake. And there's Christopher Wright, acknowledged to be one of the true experts on Georges de Latour. Wright is passionate in his condemnation of the fortune teller and maintains that the faults in this painting practically beg to be recognized. They're so obvious.
I'm claiming that this painting is such a joke that the faker, if he's still alive, is probably enjoying it and laughing, because we are not dealing with a thing which can, in my view, be taken seriously.
What's wrong with it?
Well, I first began by worrying about the signature, because after all, the art historian starts with the obvious, does he not? Now, my first analysis of the signature was based on looking at the artist's signatures on documents, because although he was a painter, he was also a businessman, and he constantly signed legal documents. So that meant that when I started comparing the signatures on his genuine pictures with those on the documents, I found that they agreed beautifully. And the one joker in the pack was this one. Now, having been worried by that inscription, I then got even more upset by another one, because written here, very carefully in capital letters, is the French word M-E-R-D-E, merde. Now, although scholars have argued as to precisely what this word means, the French say today that it means S-H-I-T. Now, the fact that it is in French rather than in English means it is slightly less disconcerting to its audience in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. But let us suppose the National Gallery in London bought a Gainsborough or a Stubbs, and S-H-I-T was neatly embroidered into one of the groom's costumes. What would we say? I think, firstly, we would laugh. Secondly, I think we would worry.
When you look at these hands, they quite clearly adopt the general type of a Latour hand. Exaggerated, long fingers curling back, exceptionally long thumbs. But they don't function. It's half a pound of sausages on the end of a pork chop. Simply do not function as hands. And there's a certain kind of outlining to the fingers, almost as though you were painting by numbers, because that is the only way that this artist, whoever he might be, could suggest that there was a structure to the shape.
If we start on the left-hand side of the painting, which is, in my opinion, the worst side, we see that she is in profile, and yet her neck appears in a slightly different angle. Now, I'm going to draw on the painting here by saying that the real line of her neck should be something like that. You see? Now, this makes a little bit more sense, i.e., whoever painted this picture couldn't draw.
My concern with it is, as a work of art, whether it's a genuine work of art or whether it's a criminal forgery. And in my view, it's criminal forgery.
What makes it a forgery? What tells you that?
Let me show you a moment. Look at his eyes. This eye is looking down here. This eye is looking here. Now, why that eye should be looking there, I can't tell you. And why that eye should be looking there, down here, is, you know, equally extraordinary. But when you come to her face, you find that she has the same eyes. That eye's looking there. Sorry to spoil your nice picture. And that eye's looking there. And I think what happened is that he painted one of these faces, he's taken a tracing of it, he's turned it over and painted hers. And that's why you've got this, you know, this ridiculous view. I mean, what's she looking at? She's not looking at anything.
So, among the evidence that you would point to is that whoever painted this was just a bad painter.
Just a bad painter. Yes, just a bad painter. And that's a good technician, but a bad painter.
Another critic is Diana de Marley, who lectures at the Courtauld Institute in London, perhaps the most renowned art investigative establishment in the world. Miss de Marley's expertise is in costume analysis. She can date paintings by the details in the clothes the subjects wear. She's been suspicious of the fortune teller since she first saw it in the 1960s.
Well, everything about the costume in this picture is wrong, and it's not 17th century. I think the whole thing is painted in the 1940s. Normal gypsy dress in the 17th century consists of a white shift, absolutely plain, right up to the neck, and a blanket, which is usually plain, sometimes striped, tied, usually on the right shoulder. And on that one, she's wearing a buckle. There are no examples of gypsies wearing buckles in the 17th century on these mantles, because buckles cost money. Gypsies are the poorest of the poor, so they use what doesn't cost money, like bits of leather, string, that sort of thing. Looking at the young man, how is this garment supposed to be put together? He's wearing a military buff coat, which was a defensive garment, very thick. It's made very, very thin down here, but in fact these pieces are about 1/4 of an inch thick solid leather. There's half a dozen of them in the Tower of London. They're very tough. Your life depended on it. But this is a very tight garment. It's got to have a front opening to put it on, but there's nothing there. There's just this thin line. What's that? A zip? And of course
the zipper presumably had not been invented in 1620.
And of course the opening should come all the way down to the right down the bottom of the front. This sort of headscarf is simply not 17th century. I mean, that's the sort of thing they're wearing a lot during the Second World War. But a peasant girl in the 17th century putting on a headscarf would have had it right down over the eyebrows, like some Balkan women still do. A genuine Latour is a work which you approach quietly and which you appreciate the more and the more you look at it, but it does not call out for your attention. These are gaudy. These are, in fact, the equivalent of whores parading for attention.
Given the weight of evidence that's coming along and has really been around for 20 years about this painting, why does the Met not take it down?
It's very difficult for the Met to admit that something so important an acquisition, so expensive an acquisition, is now doubted.
Anyone's capable of making a mistake, for sure. But here, when you have something as rare as a new Latour coming along, you surely would start out with doubts and would seek second, third, fourth opinions about the painting.
I hold the view very strongly that nobody, whether he works, whether he's part of a museum or a private collector, should fork out that sort of money without taking the greatest care to ensure that he's getting what he thinks he's getting. And I don't think this can have been done in 1960.
If it wasn't done in 1960, the Met says it's been done now. It says it's conducted a series of scientific tests and x-rays that prove once and for all that the fortune teller is genuine. We asked for copies of their lab reports and x-rays so that an independent expert could judge them. The Met refused. We prepared a list of questions with the help of scientists who specialize in works of art, but the Met refuses to answer a single question on the record, on film. Which is very strange, since the conservator of paintings at the Met, an Englishman named John Brealey, has already given a long interview to fellow Englishman Edwin Mullins for the BBC. Mullins had earlier made a program in which he proclaimed the fortune teller to be one of the 100 great masterpieces of all time. So the interview was a cozy affair between two men who agreed with each other. The questions we put to the Met weren't so cozy, and the Met refuses to give us the same cooperation. They say they'll only meet us and our experts behind the closed doors of the museum, no cameras or tape recorders allowed. Anything they said would be off the record. We wouldn't be allowed to take away photocopies of their test results for independent study. We refused the offer. We asked only for the same facilities offered by the Met to British journalists. After all, the Met happens to be in New York and is financed largely by Americans. But the Met refuses to face American cameras. I suppose an argument could be made that it doesn't matter if this painting is a fake, because after all, thousands, hundreds of millions of people have trooped through the Metropolitan Museum in the last 20 years, have gotten great pleasure out of the painting. So at this point, does it matter if it really is a Latour or is not?
Do you like plastic bacon? Of course it matters. It is, I think, intellectually offensive to show something of that kind if it is not by the man to whom it is attributed.
Irrespective of any results that they may produce from the laboratory, I shall be absolutely unmoved. I know perfectly well that the picture is a modern forgery, and in the case of the Raphael at the Boston Museum, when I attacked that, they announced that it had come through the laboratory with every success. Nevertheless, it was a modern 20th century fake and has suffered the fate that this picture will suffer in due course.
So what does it all mean? Well, one small but very important thing. When you unwrap art from the gushing language it is clothed in, when you see past the glorious marble buildings it is housed in, when you ignore the astronomical prices and the reputations at stake, and see art as business or commerce, which it is, then buying a painting or contributing to a fund to buy a painting is much the same as buying a used car. And that ancient Latin admonition has as much to do with a Georges de Latour as it does with a '62 Chevy. Caveat emptor, buyer beware. One new development since we finished filming that story, it's about that naughty word, merde. It is not unknown for art forgers and art restorers to put in a devilish clue or hint about their feelings about a painting. Well, if merde was a clue about the fortune teller, it no longer exists. John Brealey, the conservator of the Met, removed it with a chemical solvent. Shortly after that, the painting went on loan to a Paris museum where it is now hanging, and where it will remain until the end of April.
The trains are gone now, but this little station keeps on working as a constant reminder that business insurance is a two-way track. At Employers of Warsaw, our guidance can help you control losses, but your efforts are just as necessary so that, as partners, we can save life and health and property. For business insurance, come to the source, Employers Insurance of Warsaw.
And here's your room guarantee. And only Holiday Inn gives you this no excuses guarantee. Everything in your room will be right, or we'll make it right, no excuses. Or that night you stay free. Enjoy your stay.
Thank you.
You don't get this guarantee from any other hotel chain, not any one of them. And this guarantee comes from every one of us at Holiday Inn to you, because we want to take care of you. We give you a guarantee, not excuses.
"60 Minutes, a CBS News weekly magazine, will continue.
Thursday, New York's hottest female cops are back.
We're Detectives Cagney and Lacey, the 14th Precinct.
Doing the jobs other cops can't handle.
Any action? Only my feet. They're killing me.
Lacey's trying her best to stay married.
I love it.
Cagney's out playing the field. They're Cagney and Lacey, premiering Thursday.
This is CBS.
Presenting the Datsun MVPs, the maximum value package Datsun. Like this special edition King Cab MVP. Get $500 off sticker price on valuable options like jump seats, stereo, chrome step bumper, and more. Imagine $500 off. Look for similar discounts on 4x4, Lil Hustler, and Diesel MVPs. Get one now.
The new baby boom tomorrow on Evening Magazine.
A new shake at Ford, a new agreement for Ford workers. But this didn't happen overnight. It's 2 years of a growing partnership that's helped Ford improve its quality an average of 48%. Quality so high, Ford can offer you the closest thing to cost-free driving. A new Escort, EXP, about all you pay for is gas. Ford Care, nobody tops it, eh? A new shake for them, a new shake for you, right? When it comes to quality, Ford delivers.
Hands say a lot about a woman. We work with them, touch with them, even talk with them. So hands have to be soft, but never greasy.
Introducing a new Raintree Hand and Body Lotion. Natural protein powder makes Raintree feel greaseless, makes hands feel soft instantly.
Softness without greasiness. The feeling's just beautiful.
Try new Raintree Hand and Body Lotion.
Because hands say a lot about a woman.
As if there weren't enough problems on the streets of America's big cities, now there's a problem under the streets. Not as visible, but just as bad. Not as visible, that is, until there's a heavy rainstorm. That's when the pipes carrying sewage and rainwater in a combined system back up into people's basements. One solution is to build bigger pipes. In Chicago, they're building a pipe so big that its cost is estimated to exceed the cost of the Alaskan pipeline, $12 billion. That's more than 7 times last year's total budget for the entire city. So who's expected to pay for it? You are. You, the federal taxpayer. This may look like an ordinary tunnel, but it's not. This is Deep Tunnel, a true marvel of engineering. Its supporters call it the 8th engineering wonder of the world. Its critics call it a white elephant. But one thing seems certain, if government figures are correct, this entire project could be the largest and most expensive public works project this country's ever seen. They started work on this tunnel back in 1975, when the cost was an estimated $1.5 billion. That figure is now $3.5 billion if you listen to the people building the tunnel, or $12 billion if you listen to the General Accounting Office. But what will it do? Well, when it's finally hooked up to all the sewers in Chicago and the 54 surrounding suburbs, it's supposed to prevent flooding, backed up sewage in basements, and sewage spill-off into waterways. And it's also supposed to carry sewage runoff to treatment plants where it will be treated and returned as clean water to the rivers and canals around Chicago. This is how the Metropolitan Sanitary Board says Deep Tunnel will work.
The combined sewer system would be connected with the tunnels by 341 drop shafts. The polluted water in the sewer system would drop down into the deep tunnels during a period of heavy rain, instead of spewing out of the 640 outfalls and into the waterways. The tunnels would connect with several reservoirs. The mixture of sewage and rainwater would be held until the storm passed. Then it would be pumped to sewage treatment plants, purified, and released into the waterways.
One of the waterways that is supposed to benefit from this cleanup is the Chicago River, a generally foul-looking, smelly, and strictly industrial waterway. The project is also supposed to clean up other waterways in and around Chicago, including the Ship and Sanitary Canal, which was built for just that, to carry ships and sewage.
The goal of making the 71 miles of navigable waterways suitable for shipping, fishing, boating, swimming. Do you really think that that was possible?
Absolutely.
For those waterways?
Absolutely. It's still possible. We have...
The sanitary ship canal?
Certainly.
Frank Dalton is Deputy Chief Engineer of Chicago's Metropolitan Sanitary Board. In Chicago, he is known as the godfather of Deep Tunnel.
And whoever told Mayor Daley that he could swim or catch coho salmon in the Chicago River wasn't pulling his leg?
Not at all. Not at all. And when you think in terms of what that will mean within the city, so that our Chicago River is no longer our back alley, but it becomes an extension of our front yard, those dreams can be fulfilled. They can be fulfilled for another $2 billion. Finish up phase 1 TARP and put the reservoirs online, and yes, all of the streams and rivers in this area are fishable and swimmable, and yes, we will fulfill the dream of '68.
I will swim in the Chicago River the day we pull coho salmon out of it on the end of a fishing ride. And I don't intend to swim in the Chicago River, and yet those are the water standards that they're trying to achieve for waterways of that kind.
According to Senator Charles Percy of Illinois, no amount of money can clean up Chicago waterways. To spend billions, he says, is a misuse of funds.
When our schools are crumbling, when our mass transit system alone could be bolstered up by the $72 million of local taxpayers' money it would cost to operate Deep Tunnel once it was finished, if it's ever finished, which it will not be.
Donna Gerson works for the Metropolitan Sanitary Board, but she's also an alderwoman in one of the suburban communities the Deep Tunnel project is supposed to benefit.
When we have heavy rains, we have a lot of flooding, and by that I mean not only flooding in the street, but raw sewage backing up in people's basements, in their family rooms, in garden apartments. It's a severe problem.
Won't TARP solve that problem for you?
Oh, no. No, and that's where the problem lies. We need to enlarge our local sewers. We have to get the sewage from our sewers into the Deep Tunnel, for which there's a $60 million cost. Then we would have a solution. Our budget is about $50 million.
In 1 year?
In 1 year.
The entire budget for Evanston is $50 million?
Right.
That's the hook, because there are no funds in the Deep Tunnel construction costs to pay for that hookup. And if they think the federal government will come to their aid, this letter from the Environmental Protection Agency to the Chicago Sanitary Board proves otherwise. It says no federal money would be forthcoming to enlarge the local sewers leading to the tunnel.
Senator, in a project this size with so much money going into one project, what's the impact for the rest of the state?
That's a question little understood in Illinois, and I must represent the entire state. Not only will this project not do for the Chicago area what they profess it will do, but what it does is take and deprive 167 communities in Illinois of federal funds that would be available otherwise if it weren't all being sunk in Deep Tunnel. There's no way that I can oppose other boondoggles in other parts of the country and in good conscience then support the biggest, the granddaddy boondoggle of all, a Deep Tunnel.
I would take umbrage at the use of that word. The word refers to a project
or a work that has no value in it.
Nick Mellis is president of the Metropolitan Sanitary Board.
I think that in this particular instance, it is a misuse of that word. The sanitary district, as I said to you earlier, has a history of progressive innovation in the field of sewage treatment. Today, it is known as the outstanding operation in the United States, if not the world.
This is a project that will not do for the environment what is anticipated. It's supposed to stop backflooding into Lake Michigan. That is the least cost-effective way to do it. The poor homeowners feel that at the end of this line, at the end of this tunnel, their basement flooding will stop. And that is not true at all. I'm simply categorically, flatly saying every study disproves Metropolitan Sanitary District's assertions.
I really don't understand why he would be making those statements, other than the fact that he is not getting correct information and correct input from some of the staff.
Senator Percy didn't get the information from his staff. He got it from a report by the General Accounting Office, a report deep tunnel officials dismiss as biased. You referred to it once before as a hatchet job. You still
Yes, sir.
believe that?
Absolutely.
By Senator Percy?
No, I said by the GAO. And we repeatedly pointed out the errors. Even when they had their first report came out, they said that the tunnel plan would cost $8 billion. And they knew from their own report that all it cost was $2 billion, and it was with extreme reluctance that they added the word "and associated projects."
Dan White is an accountant who headed the General Accounting Office's research team on Deep Tunnel.
What GAO was saying is that if you're going to accomplish the benefits that you're claiming for TARP, or what the sanitary claims for TARP, then you've got to do these other associated projects. Now, what we were doing was adding in the cost of these associated projects and also the interest cost of the federal government to finance the TARP portions.
Here's a sampling of the cost of those associated projects. $1.5 billion for local sewer upgrading, $1 billion for treatment plant expansion, $1.9 billion for interest, $1/4 billion for channel widening. All in all, $8.5 billion more than the Metropolitan Sanitary Board estimates it will cost to solve the problems. This is the GAO report, 6 volumes dealing with every aspect of TARP. It took 4 years to complete. It involved the work of 9 auditors and numerous consulting engineers and scientists, and it had heavy input from the Army Corps of Engineers, who are considered the leading flood control experts in the world. The General Accounting Office also found some cheaper alternatives to deep tunnel. Portland, Maine, for example, has one of them. It's called a hydro brake, and it controls the amount of stormwater entering the pipes. It lets the water in gradually, so sewers never become overloaded and back up into people's homes. Excess water is temporarily held in natural catch basins and detention tanks. A string of cities from Cleveland, Ohio to Toronto, Canada, say the hydro brake system has solved their combined sewer problem.
Toronto has separate sewers, not combined sewers.
Mr. Dalton is wrong. Toronto, like Chicago, has a combined sewer system. In fact, they once started a project just like Deep Tunnel. After pouring $5 million down the drain, they stopped and went to the hydro brake system. As a result, they saved $7 million.
We've checked out the so-called hydro brake system also, and we find that it comes with severe limitations. First of all it is an inlet restriction. You don't let the water go down in the sewer, you park it on the street.
Not so, says Charles Perry, Superintendent of Operations for Sewers in Portland. He says it only takes 20 minutes to get rid of the water, even during severe storms. Has anyone from the Chicago area ever called to inquire about the hydro brake system?
Yes. Well, they asked, the questions very similar to what you've asked me, I guess. What kind of maintenance problems we had, what kind of, would we use it again, and so on. And I answered in the affirmative, yes, that we've had good luck and that we would use it again.
You know what someone said to me about you? Said Frank Dalton is a decent and honorable man who loves TARP the way some men love women. And the trouble with love is that sometimes love can be blind. You ever think you have too much in it to look at it critically?
No, I love the area, and I know as a civil engineer what I can do for this area. And I believe making the river usable by every kid that's born and raised in the city, not a place you're told to stay away from, but a place you can use. If I can fulfill that dream as a part of my civil engineering background, I will have done something with my life.
Deep tunnel is not an issue confined just to Chicago because it could become the prototype for similar projects. 15 cities are interested. Some, like San Francisco, for example, have already started to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on their own tunnels. The GAO estimates that if these cities get what MSD officials here in Chicago refer to as their fair share of funds, the cost could run to $100 billion. Probably a lot more if you consider inflation. And $100 billion is about 1/6 of the entire national budget.
Everybody in the car rental business talks about low prices, but at Hertz, we're doing something about them.
Hertz tells you in writing what your final rental charges are before you leave.
Hertz gives you unlimited mileage, no matter where you rent the car or where you return it.
Renting from Hertz really pays off where it counts the most, on the bottom line. So come to Hertz. We're number one for everyone. Hertz is number one for everyone.
Cats have something new to chow about. Purina Cat Chow brand cat food now tastes better than ever.
He's always eaten cat chow, but just look at the way he goes for it now. He really loves it. And I know that there's nothing more healthful for my cat.
That's right. Better than ever taste and great nutrition that's raised generations of healthy cats. You can depend on Purina Cat Chow.
You can depend on Purina Cat Chow.
As you've just seen, there's more than one way to have a baby, more than one way to paint a picture, and more than one way to deal with a heavy rainstorm. But
can anyone tell me then why we don't decide on just one way to turn a light switch on and off? I bought all these light switches, and each one is different. When I was growing up, the wall switches were all push buttons like this. When one goes in, the other pops out. You don't see these much anymore. This is what you find on most walls now. I suppose someone made $1 million inventing it. Doesn't really seem like much of an improvement over the old push button. This is the same kind, only silent. It doesn't click. People play their radios and television sets so loudly you can hear them 3 blocks away, but they have silent light switches in their houses. I personally find the click of a light switch a very satisfactory little sound. This is the lamp in my office. When you reach up in here to turn a light on or off, you have no idea what you're going to find. You may have to push a button like this, or twist a knob like this, or pull a chain like this. If it's your lamp, you get used to it. But if you're in a hotel room or a strange house, it's a problem. Sometimes there's nothing at all up there. You fish around with your fingers, hoping you don't get electrocuted. Then you realize it either turns on from a switch on the wall by the door over there, or it has one of those little gadgets on the cord. They put it way down on the cord so you can't find it easily. The switches for television sets, turning them on and off, are also a lot more clever than is really necessary. Here's one that pushes.
Not all diet cheese products are alike.
This one twists on.
I can't see it.
And this one pulls.
Plan the scene as an alternative to cheap.
I've pulled more knobs off more television sets in more hotel rooms. The knobs came off when I pulled them. Because I wasn't supposed to pull them, I was supposed to push them. I'm lucky with light switches, though. I just don't use them much. I'm one of those people who doesn't turn the lights off when he leaves the room.
And now the mail. About our story on the patriot turned traitor who sold military secrets to a Polish agent, a lot of our viewers were disappointed that he was sentenced to only 8 years in prison. This letter was typical. He should have been put in jail for 100 years, and the Polish spy should have been set free. At least the Pole was working for his country. Another viewer wrote, "It's ironic that if he had been a U.S. senator, he could have just resigned after he was caught and now be living on a pension." There was also a viewer who objected to our calling that story a modern American tragedy. She wrote, It should have been called a modern American disgrace. About our story on Santa Monica, California, a viewer said our piece was alarmist and red-baiting. Is 60 Minutes going to lead the McCarthyites this time around? Another viewer said, the people of Santa Monica got tired of being tied to the economic railroad tracks. Praise be to those who finally stood up to be counted. But about those in power in Santa Monica, a viewer wrote, the mayor and her husband had me convinced until Jane Fonda made her debut. Then they lost me. And finally, about our profile of Father Theodore Hesburgh, the president of Notre Dame, a letter noted that during our story on the Vatican a week or so ago, we heard from another American priest. That viewer wrote, you have now trotted out your two in-house priests, one a gadfly, the other a pseudo